Sohun went to the Star City Martial Practitioners Association alone to take the evaluation, obtain his certificate, and finally secure the benefits that came with becoming a true martial practitioner. But what should have been a simple test quickly turned into a scene no one could forget. The other practitioners looked down on him as soon as they saw how young he was, but as soon as the exam began, everything changed. After passing the vital blood test, Sohun approached the combat power machine and held back on purpose, thinking that too much strength might cause problems. Even so, his punch was so terrifying that the entire structure tore loose and flew against the wall, leaving everyone paralyzed with astonishment. A machine designed to withstand 3,000 combat power had just been sent flying like scrap metal. That monstrous demonstration immediately reached the ears of Wu Lingxian, the president of the Star City Martial Association. Curious about the genius who caused such chaos, she personally took Sohun to her office. There, what seemed like a simple meeting turned into something even more incredible. Wu Lingxian presented guidance techniques and then tested his natural attribute Affinity with a crystal sphere. What she expected was talent. What she saw was a miracle. Fire lit up to 100%, then thunder, then wind, and in no time, every attribute reached the limit. At that moment, Sohun stopped being just a promising fighter and became a monster-level genius no one could ignore. But he wasn't always that strong. He used to train with his friend in a dojo, and his friend notes that there is something different about his skill. It is then that Sohun reveals that he broke through the limit and reached the minute of subtlety 2 days ago. Speaking of the minute of subtlety, it is one of the mastery levels in this world, and martial techniques are divided into 5 levels. The first is beginner, the second is minute of subtlety, the third is mastery, the fourth is grandmaster, and the last is perfection. Sohun's friend is impressed by this and tells Sohun that he is basically untouchable among his peers when it comes to the low fist. When Sohun's friend realizes that the guy isn't tired after all the training they've done, he decides to leave, telling Sohun he needs to go home because he isn't a beast like him. Upon leaving, he runs into his teacher, Lee, who is there to look for Sohun. Lee tells Sohun about the martial exam and the need to pay 30,000 yuan to register, with the deadline being next Monday. Sohun nervously asks the teacher if he can't give him a few more days, and the man admits he knows all about Sohun's suffering. He knows his family is going through a hard time, but he can't do anything to help because rules are rules. After the teacher leaves, Sohun keeps training and soon after is the only one left in the hall. He stays thinking about how his life has been until now. He remembers how his parents died when he was just 3 years old, and it was all because of a disaster caused by a ferocious beast. Since then, Sohun has been living with his aunt and uncle. Apparently, after they discovered his talent for martial arts, they decided to support his training with everything they had, since in this era martial practitioners earn enough money to live the best life. It pains Sohun's heart because he is doing his best to become good at martial arts, but he only keeps making things worse. Later that night, Sohun arrives at the house door and hears his uncle and aunt talking about how difficult the situation is. Apparently, the rent is about to be due, but they are willing to delay the payment just so they can cover Sohun's registration fee. They believe Sohun has such incredible talent that they can't help themselves. It turns out his aunt is even suffering from an incurable illness, but she is willing to stop taking her medicine so they can save a lot of money. However, his uncle refuses, telling his wife to keep taking her medicine while he gets another job to support the family. Upon hearing all this, Sohun almost starts to cry, but manages to control himself and enters the house happily, as if he hadn't heard anything they were talking about. His aunt doesn't scold him for training so late at night, believing he must be exhausted already. Sohun offers to help with the chores, but they refuse, suggesting he rest first. While lying in his bed, Sohun decides he needs to start fixing things by himself because his guardians have sacrificed so much for him. As he wants to earn good money, he realizes there is only one place he can go as a martial cultivator. Later, Sohun heads to the Martial Apprentice Defense Challenge, which is an underground fighting arena. Sohun puts a Minotaur mask on his head to hide his identity, and the host tells him that all he has to do is win 4 fights in a row to take 60,000 yuan. However, he is not allowed to lose because if he loses even once, he gets nothing. The crowd isn't very excited about Sohun's presence, as it is the first time they've heard of him or even seen him. They mock him, saying he is playing with his life because the underground arena is no place for rookies, unless he is looking for death. Seeing that the crowd is subdued by his presence, the hostess asks Sohun to hype up the audience. So-hun is completely new to this kind of thing and asks the hostess how he is supposed to do it. She gives him ideas like provoking the crowd or even insulting them. So-hun follows her advice and shouts, telling the audience he is invincible while calling his opponents weak. This only makes things worse for him, as the crowd immediately concludes he is arrogant. The crowd immediately changes sides and tells his opponent to shatter So-hun. So-hun finally understands why it is an underground arena, because the intent to kill is felt everywhere. However, he has no other choice because this is the only way he can win the money for the tuition, but he can only hope his low fist helps him win a few fights. So-hun analyzes his opponent and realizes he is an easy rival. The guy makes the first move, lunging at So-hun with a punch, but So-hun easily counters it by slamming his head against the floor, knocking him out with no problem. So-hun raises his hand excitedly, but the crowd isn't entirely satisfied with his performance. In no time, the next opponent steps onto the stage and assures So-hun he is going to give him a beating because he only got lucky defeating his first rival. With a quick analysis, So-hun realizes this guy is actually quite decent and signals for him to come at him. The guy jumps at So-hun with his fist raised, but this time, So-hun meets him halfway with his own punch. With this, So-hun realizes the guy may be decent, but is actually inferior to him in strength. Basically, the guy was left completely exposed after an attack, and So-hun takes advantage of this by kicking him in the waist, sending him flying. The guy is sent crashing against the wall and is knocked out immediately, giving So-hun 2 consecutive victories. Meanwhile, the man in charge is watching everything from his office and is surprised by how skilled So-hun is, even though he isn't even a quasi-martial practitioner. Before they realize it, So-hun has already defeated his third opponent and only has 1 fight left to win 60,000 yuan. The man says So-hun is the perfect candidate for fixed fights, and his subordinate, who is wearing a fox mask, offers to go recruit So-hun. The man tells Mr. Fox not to reveal the fact that he has already advanced to a true martial practitioner. Meanwhile, So-hun already imagines himself with the 60,000 yuan in his hands because he believes he can handle his opponents thanks to his minute of subtlety level low fist. Just at that moment, Fox, known to the crowd as White Fox, enters the arena and everyone is impressed. They aren't entirely impressed with White Fox's participation because they know he is quite strong. When So-hun hears that the guy is a quasi-martial practitioner, he realizes he is in for a tough fight, but he is not willing to lose. White Fox notices the discomfort on his face and tells him to relax, assuring him he will hold back with him. The referee then starts the match, and as So-hun can feel he is inferior to White Fox, he decides to go all out from the beginning. Their fists meet halfway and the force of the blow makes it clear to So-hun that he was wrong. He realizes White Fox is not a quasi-martial practitioner, but a true martial practitioner who suppressed his assembly vital energy. Sweat runs down his body, and before he even knows what is happening, White Fox throws him far away with his lightning rush fist technique, which in this case is a triple resonance lightning rush fist. So-hun crashes against the floor while the stomps shatter his body. The crowd is shocked to see this and concludes So-hun no longer has a chance. The fight continues, and So-hun is forced to go on the defensive. White Fox keeps mocking So-hun, telling him to show his true self because he seems weak. So-hun, on the other hand, can't even move from where he is and knows perfectly well that if this continues, he is dead. He is looking for an opportunity when White Fox gives him a direct punch to the face that sends him flying far away. So-hun crashes against the floor with his face disfigured and realizes he is gradually losing consciousness. White Fox puts his leg on him, telling him that if this continues, he won't be able to get the prize money they promised him. However, he lets him know he has an offer for him. He tells him to join them and start letting himself lose in fights for them while collecting the full prize from each fight. So-hun confidently tells White Fox he isn't interested in something so shameless. White Fox's tone and expression change as he tells So-hun to reconsider his decision because he can't refuse them. However, So-hun tells them they should cover their faces in shame because they call themselves martial practitioners with the kind of garbage trick they are doing. As So-hun won't accept his offer, White Fox tells him he is going to leave him useless so he can't practice martial arts again. White Fox launches a kick at So-hun, but the moment So-hun realizes the seriousness of what White Fox said, he recomposes himself and dodges the attack. He stands up again with the fierce determination that he can't afford to lose. White Fox is surprised to see So-hun can still stand, even though he just took the full power of his lightning rush fist. Unbeknownst to him, So-hun is driven by the will to become a martial practitioner so his family can have a good life. For a moment, he considers White Fox's offer, but immediately discards it because he isn't someone who would accept such a garbage offer to build his future. Suddenly, a status window appears in front of him, and the system asks what he is willing to give for his family. Without hesitation, So-hun answers he would give everything. An overwhelming aura swirls around his body, and suddenly he finds himself in a strange space. There is a giant golden figure in front of him that tells So-hun he is going to give him a chance. Suddenly, a golden status window appears in front of So-hun, which shows So-hun's statistics and techniques. So-hun wonders if it is a touch screen, but immediately confirms it is by just touching it with his hand. He checks the quest section, where he finds a quest called Path of the Arena. He is expected to perfect his martial arts in that space, and then return outside to face White Fox. As it is the beginner's tutorial, he is informed there is no reward for it. So-hun wonders what the quest is about when his clone appears behind him and throws a punch at his head. So-hun barely manages to dodge it and realizes his clone is using the same skill as him. In fact, his clone's skill seems even more perfected than his, which is more or less a textbook standard. As he now has a worthy opponent and an example to learn from, So-hun decides to give it his all. So-hun attacks his clone, but the clone easily dodges his strike before launching a counterattack that pushes So-hun back. Suddenly, So-hun realizes the progress in his technique has increased to 10%, and before the duel started it was at 7%. It is then that So-hun understands the simple truth that his clone can help him master his technique faster. So-hun lunges at him, and they start exchanging blows, and each punch increases the mastery of the technique. Without realizing it, he masters a bunch of techniques just by training with his clone and getting a beating from himself. After a rigorous session, he finally receives a congratulatory message from the system telling him he has completed the quest. He is asked if he wants to return to reality, and he answers yes. Back in reality, White Fox believes So-hun is just playing at being interesting and mysterious. He lunges at So-hun and throws a punch at his face, but all he catches is So-hun's afterimage. So-hun easily dodges the guy's attack while telling him he is too slow. The next thing White Fox feels is a direct punch to the face, breaking his mask and rearranging the bones of his face. With just one hit, So-hun knocks White Fox to the ground while the crowd goes wild. Then, So-hun heads to the hostess and asks when they are going to give him his money because he just won his 4th fight. The lady is totally stunned by what she just witnessed and takes her time before announcing So-hun as the winner, revealing they are going to give him the 60,000 yuan reward. The owner of the place is impressed by what he just saw and wonders how it is possible for a martial apprentice to master the low fist technique. Then the man tells 2 of his men to follow So-hun to find out who he is. On the way home, So-hun quickly realizes he is being followed and doesn't waste time executing a maneuver that successfully throws off the guys tailing him. They are left wondering where he went, but unbeknownst to them, he is right above them. An hour later, So-hun returns home and hands his guardians the money he just won. They are shocked to see this and ask him where he got the money. So-hun lies saying he won the money by being a sparring partner at the dojo where he works. He adds that they have decided to sponsor his training because of how talented he is, and the uncle is surprised to hear this since he had previously complained about how stingy the dojo is. So-hun reassures the 2, asking them if they don't trust him. The 2 immediately react and agree that their nephew would never lie to them. Later that night, So-hun goes up to the rooftop to think about how well his day went. He has managed to solve the registration for the martial exam and even fix the rent issue. In fact, his aunt's medical bills have already been covered to some extent. So-hun is glad he was able to turn danger into safety thanks to the system, but he realizes that, aside from the technique levels, the other values didn't change. He notices there is something called martial Dao value, but doesn't know what it is for. The system tells him that defeating an opponent of a higher level would give him 67 points of martial Dao value, and that this can be used to increase vital blood and martial techniques, so he must use them wisely. So-hun decides to try it immediately and increases his vital blood, which is immediately reflected in his body. His vital blood jumps to the 90 mark, and he realizes he has reached the quasi-martial practitioner level. He decides to add all the points he has to vital blood and immediately notices an increase in his physical strength, plus most of his wounds have also fully recovered. As he feels overwhelming power in his body, he realizes finding a good place to test it is the best option. He decides to go to the school's martial training field, where there is a combat power meter. Moments later, he arrives at the Star City #1 High School Martial Training Field, where the device is located. It turns out to be a Level 1 combat meter, and he decides to use 70% of his fist strength to test it. He takes a deep breath before hitting the device, and to his misfortune, he destroys it. So-hun knows he is dead if they find out he was the one who ruined the machine. At the same time, he simply concludes that the machine is bad. That's why it broke so easily. Suddenly, he hears someone coming in his direction, and this is because they heard the noise from the meter. It turns out to be the principal, and the boy almost faints when he realizes the school's meter has been smashed. He immediately concludes this is the work of the school's two geniuses, Chen-san and Lee-tu. The principal decides to teach the two a lesson when classes resume. Later, the students gather in the school gym, and So-hun notices that Chen-san is all beaten up. He asks his friend what happened, and he tells So-hun that Chen-san was beaten because he broke the field meter the previous night. So-hun can't even say anything about it because he realizes the old man made sure Chen-san took the blame. Just at that moment, the principal appears and yells at the students to shut up, telling them he invited one of his comrades in arms, who is a third-level martial practitioner. Basically, he is there to teach everyone a C-rank martial art, the lightning rush fist. The students are impressed by this because it is the first time they are going to see a third-level martial practitioner. Apparently, external instructors usually charge hundreds of thousands to teach C-rank martial arts, but they are about to receive it for free at school. So-hun, on the other hand, remembers it is the same technique White Fox used during their fight. So-hun admits it is quite powerful since it is a triple resonance strike. As the opportunity may only come once, So-hun plans to make the most of it. The coach then tells the students to pay attention because he is only going to demonstrate the technique 10 times from start to finish. He lets them know how much they learn is up to them. Without wasting time, the coach begins the demonstration and throws a punch while explaining that the Thunder Rush has several levels. Basically, each punch produces a thunderclap, and upon mastering the technique, 3 resonances are generated. At the minute of subtlety level, 5 resonances are produced, and at a greater mastery, 7 are achieved, which is the coach's current level. However, he lets them know that if the technique is perfected, it can generate 9 resonances. Even so, he tells them not to rush because even if they only reach the beginner level that day, it is enough. The coach then tells them to follow his example as he begins the second demonstration. Hours later, the students are already exhausted, and none have managed to achieve it. Surprisingly, So-hun is no longer in the hall and his friend wonders where he could have gone. Moments later, Shen-jen reaches the beginner level and is still the only one among the students who achieved it. This further demonstrates his status as the school's genius. The principal excitedly tells the coach that Shen-jen is the school's genius and asks if he is interested in giving him some guidance. However, the coach is disappointed by what the principal calls his class's genius. He tells the man that Shen-jen is, at best, average. As they walk towards the school entrance, the coach tells Principal Lee that his students are garbage and that he basically just wasted a good trip. Lee tells the coach he should be happy he even found a student who reached the beginner level because getting a first-level genius is practically impossible. The coach then tells the old man that martial cultivation is hard, which means talent is too important. The principal agrees that relying solely on effort without destiny is practically impossible. Suddenly, they see a student practicing on the school field and it turns out to be So-hun, but as he has his back to them, they don't recognize him. Right in front of them, So-hun is able to execute the 7-resonance lightning rush fist, which leaves them stunned. The coach asks Lee about So-hun, but he doesn't even know he has someone so talented in his school. They are even more surprised when they realize So-hun has reached a greater mastery in what the coach showed them just a few hours ago. At that moment, Lee notices the coach stands still, as if trying to understand something. Lee asks what the problem is, but suddenly the coach tells the principal he has finally understood what he needs to do. He clenches his fist and throws a punch to activate the 8 resonances, which leaves Lee surprised. Lee can't believe the coach managed to advance right there, and the man reveals that seeing So-hun gave him the inspiration. He admits he might never have been able to achieve it if not for him. However, he suggests they ignore all the boring conversations and simply find out who the student is. They run to the field, but to their surprise, So-hun has already disappeared. As he walks away from the school, So-hun expresses his surprise at how exhausting it is to cultivate a C-rank technique. As his Thunder Rush fist has already reached perfection, he realizes he has to find a way to earn Dao value to advance to martial practitioner as soon as possible. He wonders if he is going to earn points and train with someone instead of risking his life in a life-or-death situation. Later, So-hun arrives at the Thunder Dojo, where he works part-time. Upon entering the dojo, his friend asks why he is there that day, and So-hun answers he just went to practice a bit. Meanwhile, a purple-haired student is busy arguing with another. So-hun asks his friend what the problem is, and he reveals that the new instructor is the purple-haired kid's teacher. Basically, the instructor is quite strong, but looks down on commoners as if they aren't human. The purple-haired one is Lion, and he is also quite strong. Lion is about to hit the student he is arguing with when So-hun grabs his arm and tells him to calm down. Lion is upset because a common guy just grabbed him and demands to know who he is. In fact, he tells So-hun that if he thinks he is so brave, to face him one-on-one in the arena. So-hun doesn't hesitate to accept the challenge, but the instructor enters just in time to ruin everything. He tells them to prepare for class and Lion mocks So-hun, telling him he literally got lucky. Then the instructor reveals it is his last day teaching the students the art of the Furious Sea Spear, which he is only going to demonstrate once, as he has always done. Deep down, the instructor doesn't expect any of them to learn it, as he believes they are all useless. The instructor keeps his word and demonstrates the move only once, but So-hun manages to memorize it all. The instructor walks away, telling the students the rest is up to them, but they yell at him, complaining he only demonstrated it once. While everyone argues and protests, So-hun proceeds to try what he just memorized. To everyone's surprise, So-hun does it very well, leaving his peers impressed. The students start to believe they really are dumb, that's why they can't learn it. Just at that moment, Lion enters the hall again because he can hear the students' excitement from the other room. He is surprised to see So-hun actually learn the technique and decides he has to test the depth of the kid to see if he really is a genius. Lion gets So-hun's attention, telling him he would like to give him some tips on the art of the spear. So-hun accepts, and this makes So-hun's friend very nervous. He tells So-hun that even though Lion is arrogant, he is actually strong. So So-hun tells his friend not to worry about him, and So-hun points his spear at Lion, mocking him. Lion becomes furious at how arrogant So-hun is and lunges at him using his technique, but So-hun meets him halfway with a pretty good technique as well. Lion is left in shock while wondering how it is possible that So-hun managed to cultivate his technique to the mastery level so fast, even though he isn't a martial practitioner. The two keep throwing blows at each other. So-hun enters a flow state with his eyes shining, and finally makes Lion's spear fly out of his hand. The system immediately informs him that he has been awarded 35 points because he defeated an opponent who is above his level. So-hun feels satisfied seeing this because it is just as he suspected. As the simple act of practicing with others gives him points, he realizes he just has to keep training with more people. Lion, for his part, is on his knees wondering how he was defeated by someone he considers garbage. He doesn't want to accept defeat, so he stands up and runs towards So-hun with a punch, but the instructor enters just in time to stop the fight. The instructor approaches Lion and slaps him in the face, telling him he can't consider himself a true martial practitioner unless he is capable of facing failure. Lion can't believe his teacher scolded him because of So-hun. Deep down, the instructor is curious about how So-hun managed to master the technique just by watching his demonstration once. The guy knows even the geniuses from the capital would have had trouble doing what So-hun just did. He knows Lion is talented, but he is too arrogant, and he believes being humiliated by So-hun will teach him some humility. The instructor grabs Lion's head and forces him to bow to So-hun. The instructor also apologizes to So-hun, telling him it is his fault for not teaching Lion well. So-hun can't believe how quickly the instructor can change his tone. That night, So-hun heads home, and on the way he checks the rewards he got thanks to the fight and the teachings. Although he is exhausted, he is grateful for the rewards. He remembers the school exam will be in a few days, and that the students who have money have already prepared high-quality alloy weapons, which means he also has to prepare his own weapon. As the spear he used felt very comfortable, he decided to stick with spears and concluded he would have to buy an alloy spear. However, he only has a little money, which isn't even enough for his aunt's treatment, much less to buy a spear. He starts racking his brain thinking if there is any other way to earn money, and just at that moment he realizes an important news report is being broadcast on the screen. It turns out the city lord is recruiting martial practitioners due to the growing number of ferocious beasts. So-hun immediately adds this to his list of things to do. Moments later, he arrives home and immediately starts helping his aunt with the chore she is working on. He helps put massage patches on his uncle's back while telling him not to overexert himself again, since now he can earn money for the family. His uncle admits that would be nice, but that he doesn't think he can just sit idle. His uncle tells him not to worry because he is only earning a bit for daily expenses, so he won't push himself too hard. Sohun's aunt then reminds him that later he is going to need a lot of money for his martial arts training, so they want to save as much as they can for him. Sohun immediately realizes his uncle and aunt aren't going to sit and rest because they are already used to living in hard times, which means the only solution is to earn a crazy amount of money to assure them they don't have to worry about working themselves to death. This further reinforces his decision to earn money by hunting ferocious beasts. However, he knows the wilderness is dangerous, and to be safe he realizes he needs to increase his strength as much as possible. He decides to put all the martial Dao points he has into vital blood. After adding all the points he has, his vital blood level skyrockets to 95.2, leaving him one step away from becoming a martial practitioner. After 2 full days of working very hard, Sohun manages to perfect all his martial techniques. As he has finished his preparations, he realizes it is time to leave the city to hunt beasts. That Saturday, Sohun heads to the Star City martial practitioner's base, and as it is his first time going, he is surprised by how far it is. Upon entering the base, he realizes it is full of martial practitioners you don't see every day. Sohun takes a manual where he learns about the points granted for each ferocious beast defeated, from the first level, initial stage, to the advanced stage. It turns out that after killing a ferocious beast, it is required to cut off its left ear as proof, otherwise the kill won't count. He is looking around when he notices a group entering the base. The big guy among them carries a huge bag on his back, which is obviously full of left ears. The group's arrival catches everyone's attention, and at the front of the group is a blonde-haired guy, Ji. Sohun notices something strange about Ji's aura and clothing, which makes him believe Ji is White Fox from the underground arena. It turns out the practitioners really don't like Ji, and most would have beaten him up if his uncle weren't in charge of the base. Ji soon realizes Sohun is standing in the distance, and their eyes meet. Sohun immediately realizes he has to worry about humans in addition to worrying about beasts. After sorting out his affairs, Sohun tells the officer he is going out alone, and the officer thinks Sohun is just going to die in the wild because he wants to prove he is foolish. Venturing into the forest, Sohun makes the decision to return with a bag full of monster ears. 2 hours later, Sohun is already frustrated because he has been walking without seeing a single beast. As he hasn't had any luck walking around the area, he decides to go deeper into the forest. He hasn't even gone far when he comes across a ghost moon wolf, which is a first-level initial stage ferocious beast. It is the first time he sees one in person, and the beast doesn't waste time lunging at him with clear intentions to tear him apart. With the beast charging recklessly, Sohun meets it halfway with a power-enhanced punch that sends it flying against a tree. With just one punch from Sohun, the monster is sent to the afterlife. Although he is trembling, Sohun can't help but admit it was a much more thrilling experience than he imagined. He realizes that, with his current strength, he can kill a first-level initial stage ferocious beast with a single blow, which leaves him wondering how he would fare against a first-level mid-stage one. Meanwhile, he is being stalked by another monster that watches him from deep within the forest. Suddenly, the monster attacks, and it turns out to be a furious black bear, which is a first-level mid-stage ferocious beast. It jumps at Sohun trying to take him by surprise, but Sohun also defeats it with relative ease. With this, Sohun concludes he isn't in any kind of danger as long as he doesn't run into second-level ferocious beasts. Sohun cuts the bear's ear and smiles because he just secured a 3,000 reward. Just at that moment, the system informs him he now has enough martial Dao points to advance to martial practitioner. Suddenly, he feels an overwhelming presence in the distance, which catches his attention. This leaves Sohun wondering what kind of beast could emit such a terrifying presence. He decides to go investigate and runs towards where the aura was coming from. When he arrives, he finds a group of martial practitioners being torn apart by a terrifying giant jade python that is a first-level advanced stage ferocious beast. One of the martial practitioners tries to block the snake with his shield, but is thrown against a rock, finally losing his life. Before he realizes it, he perceives that the snake has locked onto him as a target. The snake lunges at him, forcing him to jump back frantically. However, the snake is so fast it manages to close the distance in an instant, landing a blow that makes Sohun spit blood. Sohun wipes the blood from his mouth and takes a spear from one of the dead practitioners, telling the deceased he would like to borrow his spear. So, Hun then stands fearlessly in front of the snake, But this only makes the snake even more furious. The snake goes after So-hun with ferocity, forcing So-hun to run. Basically, defeating this kind of monster would require several martial practitioners working together. However, all his martial techniques have reached perfection, and he can easily kill a mid-stage, first-level furious black bear, so he believes he has a chance against the python. So-hun uses his movement techniques to try to gain an advantage over the snake before attacking it with his spear art. The spear pierces through the snake's body, making it scream in pain. The spear comes out the other side, and So-hun quickly goes after it. He pulls out the spear and throws it at the python again. This time, the spear goes through the snake's neck, leaving a hole in it while the python becomes even more enraged. The snake goes after So-hun violently, trying to catch him off guard, but So-hun is too agile for the snake to catch. Due to the size difference between them, So-hun knows it is quite difficult for him to land a lethal blow in a single attack. Since the situation has come to this, he realizes he can only weaken the beast as much as possible until he is able to deliver the final blow. While dodging the snake's movements, So-hun gives it a powerful blow to the body before going for his spear again. So-hun has been putting distance between himself and the snake after each attack, so he can find another opportunity to attack again. Although this method is draining his energy, he has no other choice because it is the only safe method he can use. While panting like a dog, So-hun realizes the snake is also getting exhausted already. So-hun is convinced he can defeat the snake after a couple more exchanges. This motivates So-hun, and just as he is about to start another phase of attack, he feels something strange behind him, looks back and sees the big guy from Ji's team jumping at him with a punch. So-hun manages to raise his arm just in time to block the attack, but is sent flying far away thanks to the strong punch. So-hun manages to get on his knees while coughing heavily from the blow. He looks up and sees Ji and his gang arriving in a group, and without hesitation, Ji tells So-hun to hand over the python. Ji tells So-hun he thought he was going to die in the forest because he saw him leave the city alone. However, he is surprised that he had the luck to come across a wounded python. While they are busy arguing this, the python is already on the brink of death. And as Ji said he only got lucky finding the python, So-hun realizes they just arrived. So-hun knows he is at a numerical disadvantage, and to make things worse, they are martial practitioners. So-hun is thinking about how to proceed when the big guy lunges at him again. He yells at So-hun, telling him to get lost, but So-hun is filled with rage. He yells at the guy, telling him he was only forced to repel his previous attack because it was a surprise attack. He asks the guy if he really thinks he can't give them all a beating. So-hun then meets the guy halfway with a powerful punch, and before he can react, receives a punch to the head. The guy falls to the ground, knocked out of the fight. Seeing So-hun's skill, Ji immediately confirms he is the Minotaur guy from the underground arena. Ji tells So-hun he is literally the first person to humiliate him so badly in front of so many people. Ji then orders his lackeys to kill So-hun. Seeing he is about to be attacked, So-hun grabs the spear and jumps into the forest. The guys chase him, but thanks to the dense forest, So-hun manages to stay hidden. However, the gang isn't afraid of So-hun because he is just one person. Suddenly, So-hun appears out of nowhere, and before the guy with the mask knows what is happening, he slams him against the ground with immense force. So-hun immediately disappears, and Ji realizes our protagonist is quite fast. By now, Ji's lackeys have already started to worry because the skill So-hun just used is no ordinary thing. However, Ji yells at them, telling them to shut their mouths. Meanwhile, So-hun is hidden in a tree and knows he could have faced them all head-on if the snake hadn't drained his energy. Since that is the case, he is left with the only safe option, which is taking them out one by one. So-hun jumps from the tree and throws his spear near them to get their attention. The moment they lose focus because of the spear, he goes after the one with the nice hair and kicks him in the head, leaving him completely crazed. The last one on the team screams like a baby, telling Ji it would be fine if they ran away because So-hun is too strong, but Ji refuses, saying he has to kill So-hun that same day. Before he realizes it, So-hun appears out of nowhere like before and slams the last guy against the ground, leaving Ji as the only one on the team. By now, Ji is already shitting himself with fear. As he is the last one on the team, So-hun decides to play with him. So-hun runs to his side, and by the time Ji turns around, So-hun has already disappeared. Then, So-hun reappears behind him, but Ji manages to react to this. He yells at So-hun, telling him not to get too confident, believing he has him cornered. Ji fires a burst of energy with his finger that So-hun barely manages to dodge. The burst grazes So-hun's head and destroys the tree behind him. To keep So-hun away, Ji keeps firing energy bursts with his finger thanks to a skill called Void Shattering Finger. Sohun is forced to keep changing places and realizing how strong Ji's technique is, wonders if it is a B-rank skill. Then Ji starts talking non-stop, telling Sohun to show himself, but he doesn't stop there. He then proceeds to threaten Sohun's family, saying he is going to have them killed when he returns to the city. This turns out to be his biggest mistake, as Sohun immediately enters a frenzied mode. He ignores the essence of fear and starts running towards Ji's position. Ji keeps boasting about his connections when a bloodthirsty Sohun appears behind him with a powerful blow. He tells Ji he actually preferred his arrogant version before giving him such a strong punch to the head. Ji's head is almost twisted off his body as he goes flying far away before crashing against a wall. Sohun looks like a demon from hell as he walks towards Ji, telling him he should have left his family out of this. With blood coming out of his body like water, Ji asks Sohun how he became so strong, which is supposed to be impossible. He is still asking stupid questions when the black python appears behind him and slams him against the ground with its huge tail. The snake then directs its attention towards Sohun and seems angrier than before as it screams at Sohun. Sohun realizes too much time has passed fighting Ji, which gave the snake time to recover. Meanwhile, Ji's lackeys have regained consciousness, and while wondering where Ji is, they see Sohun running towards them. Just as they prepare to face him in a fight, Sohun yells at them to get out of the way. They soon realize Sohun is being chased by the black python. Sohun runs past them, but because they are so slow, the black python kills them. Surprisingly, Sohun is awarded points for indirectly killing his opponents. Sohun is surprised to realize he can also earn points this way, and this reminds him he now has enough points to advance and become a martial practitioner. He decides to look for a safe place for himself and soon notices a cave in the distance. Without hesitation, he runs towards the cave and disappears inside before the snake catches him. However, the snake is about to give up while still trying to force its way into the cave. Seeing how desperate the snake is, Sohun quickly pulls up the status window and starts adding points to his vital blood as fast as he can. Doing this causes him intense pain, as if lava is flowing throughout his body. After adding all the points and enduring the pain, Sohun finally becomes a true martial practitioner with a red aura swirling around his body. Noticing the difference in Sohun's aura, the python starts to retreat and move away from the cave. However, Sohun goes after it and punches the snake in the head, sending it flying through the air. The snake bleeds profusely, but Sohun isn't done with it yet. Sohun jumps towards the snake and gives it a powerful blow to the body before stabbing it with the spear. By exerting great force on the spear, Sohun manages to pin the snake to the ground. This gives Sohun the chance to prepare the lightning rush fist, which he delivers to the snake's head without mercy. The overwhelming force of Sohun's blow is enough to crush the snake's head, granting him 92 Dao points. Hun is immensely proud of himself because he was able to withstand the snake's attacks. When the time comes to cut proof to show he killed the snake, he is confused because snakes don't have ears. Even so, he realizes the most important thing is to return to the base. When he is about to leave, he finds Ji's crushed body on the ground. Sohun lets him know he should be grateful he died that way because he obviously had other plans for him. Then Sohun decides to search him, hoping to find the high-level technique he was using. Fortunately for him, he found the book on the void-shattering finger. That night, Sohun locks himself in the cave to memorize and master the new technique he just found. Once he is ready, he summons his clone and the two engage in a fierce battle in which he tries to master the void-shattering finger. After so much stress, he finally manages to advance to the beginner level of the technique. When he returns to reality, he realizes he is already bleeding from the nose, which shows how powerful the technique is. Sohun decides to look for a monster to test the power of the technique. 3 days later, Sohun is still busy hunting monsters with the new technique. He confidently fires an energy burst at a brown bear that lunges at him, and this easily destroys the bear. Sure he has already mastered the skill, Sohun concludes it is time to return to the base. He heads to the counter where everyone is registering their kills. He drops his bag and the clerk checks it. Ida starts naming the monsters Sohun defeated, surprising the other practitioners around. It turns out Sohun was able to defeat monsters worth 406,000 points. It is then that Sohun realizes he overdid it because he actually only wanted to hunt a few at first. Suddenly, one side of the wall in the base is destroyed. The practitioners are surprised to see they are being attacked when there are literally a bunch of them around. Just at that moment, the person who destroyed the wall reveals himself, and it turns out to be Ji's uncle, who is in charge of the base. The practitioners are surprised to see old Ji is furious, and the officers ask him what the problem is. The old man then reveals that his nephew and his entire gang have been killed. The crowd is shocked to hear this, but deep down they aren't worried because G was a jerk when he was alive, so most really didn't care. Old G then mentions that a B-rank technique was taken from G's body, and he wants everyone in the base to be searched before they are allowed to leave. So-hun keeps a serious face while thinking about everything that happened in the forest. He is sure the corpses can't be linked to him, since the python was the monster that killed G and his team. So-hun is thinking about this when suddenly Old G stares at him, which surprises him. Old G then turns to So-hun and tells him he is aware of his latest feat of defeating beasts as if it were nothing, which earned him over 400,000 points. One of Old G's assistants tells him she checked So-hun's stats, and they are barely enough to be at the stage, so there is no way he killed so many beasts. The lady believes So-hun just picked up G's backpack and suggests they search So-hun. Two bodyguards approach So-hun with an intimidating aura while telling him to uncover himself. Just as they are about to reach him, So-hun points his spear at them before they even realize it. They ask him what he is trying to do, and So-hun reveals he is a student at Star City No. 1 High School. He asks them if they are really willing to search him. As soon as Old G hears this, he remembers the school principal is known for fiercely protecting his students. He knows perfectly well the principal is no pushover, so it would be pointless to mess with him. However, he believes So-hun is quite suspicious. Old G secretly admits So-hun could be a genius if he were the one who hunted all the beasts, which means wrongfully using him could cause them problems. Then, Old G approaches So-hun and tells him how he and his team were ambushed. He adds that a technique was stolen from them and that they would need to search him. So So-hun decides to add a condition to all this. He tells Old G he would like to be paid 30,000 yuan in case they find nothing on him. So-hun is sure nothing that happened can be linked to him. Old G accepts the deal and tells his men to search So-hun thoroughly. After they finish searching him, they find nothing and G tells them to give So-hun the 30,000 yuan they owe him. So-hun is happy everything is going quite well, and it is thanks to him burning the book before leaving the forest. After being searched, So-hun prepares to leave and already has his next steps planned. Then So-hun heads to the inn at the martial practitioner's base. Once he settles in, he decides to use his points. He is surprised to see he has such a large amount of accumulated points. However, he is left confused about what to choose. He realizes that the mortal body and spirit haven't received any improvements from the beginning. As he is curious, he decides to try it and spends his points on the spirit and the mortal body. After filling the mortal body with points, he decides to invest the rest in the spirit. This is enough to trigger severe changes in his body that even So-hun can feel. The spirit skill is about to transform him into a muscular man, but So-hun manages to lower its intensity. He is grateful he controlled it because there would be no way to explain it to anyone. 1 hour after this, So-hun heads to the Star City Martial Practitioners Association. He meets the receptionist and tells her he is there for the practitioner evaluation. The lady attends to him calmly, telling him that a staff member will soon show him the way. Just as she said, a staff member appears to guide him to the section where he will take the exam. As he walks past the other practitioners, they are all surprised that a kid like him came to take the test. The staff informs So-hun that to be a first-level martial practitioner, one needs 100 of vital blood and over 1,000 of combat power to pass the exam. The practitioners watching him believe he is only there to test what the whole process is like. Upon arriving at the testing center, So-hun watches as some guys fail the exam. However, one candidate, Lamin, passes right in front of him with a combat power of 1,000 points. It turns out he is a student of Hyun Min, and Min is also Leon's instructor. Min is surprised to learn this, wondering how many disciples he actually has. Then the guy tells So-hun, with arrogance, that it's now his turn to take his test. Lamin believes So-hun is going to make a fool of himself because he thinks he has a chance. Suddenly, his arrogant attitude fades when he learns that So-hun passed the vital blood test with 123 points. However, he tries to calm himself down by thinking that So-hun hasn't taken the combat power test yet, and that is the most important one. So-hun is taken to the combat power testing machine and remembers how he broke the machine at school. He realizes he has become stronger, so he is going to use 4/10 of his power. Suddenly, it occurs to him that this could backfire, because if he goes too light and doesn't reach the required number, it would be bad. So he decides to use 5/10 of his power to avoid mistakes. So-hun hits the field testing machine with such force that it becomes disconnected from where it was bolted. The machine flies off and crashes into the wall, leaving those who witnessed the test shocked. Min, who just minutes ago was very arrogant, couldn't even comprehend what just happened in front of him. The machine's capacity is 3,000 combat power points, but So-hun basically surpassed it, and the other practitioners conclude that So-hun is a true monster. Meanwhile, the president of the Star City Martial Association, Wu Lingxian, is in her office complaining about the lack of geniuses. She is worried that her position as president is in jeopardy if she doesn't manage to present one very soon. Suddenly, one of the officials runs into the room, telling her that a monster just appeared in the martial practitioner evaluation. Wu's mind starts working at 1,000 miles per hour upon hearing this, because it's exactly what she wanted. Later, So-hun is in the hallway receiving instructions from one of the employees. He tells him that he is going to get a practitioner identity and that he will also receive a stipend. Suddenly, Wu appears at the top of the stairs and tells her subordinate to hand So-hun over to her. The guy is surprised that the president appears just for So-hun. Wu introduces herself and tells So-hun to follow her. So-hun obeys the order, but he is impressed by how young the lady is and that she is already someone to be careful around. Upon arriving at the president's office, Wu comments that Li told her he had no geniuses in his school, but it turns out it was a lie. Then So-hun asks the lady why she brought him to her office, since he only came to register as a martial arts practitioner so he could collect his stipend while getting a guide technique. Wu asks So-hun to relax because she already told the staff to take care of the martial practitioner certificate and his monthly stipend. And regarding the guide technique, she tells So-hun that she herself is going to teach it to him personally. She asks him how much he knows about guide techniques, and So-hun explains what he learned in books. Wu lets him know that what the textbook says isn't entirely wrong, but she reveals that guide techniques are much more than simple cultivation methods. She uses her celestial flame guide technique as an example, saying that it absorbs fire attribute spiritual energy. While it strengthens the body, it also gives his attacks destructive power with a flame attribute. She tells him that if he manages to externalize said attribute, he can expand the range of his attacks. However, for a first-level martial practitioner like him, she tells him that it's already impressive to carry even a hint of that attribute, so he doesn't have to kill himself trying to envelop his fist in the attribute as she just demonstrated. So-hun is surprised to realize that guide techniques can be used to attack because he thought they only served to absorb spiritual energy and cultivate. He is surprised that the textbook he read never mentioned anything like that. Wu continues by saying that there are 7 spiritual energies of heaven and earth. They are metal, wood, water, fire, earth, thunder, and wind. She says they all have their strengths and weaknesses. But when it comes to pure attack power, thunder ranks first, metal second, and fire third. Then she tells him that the guide technique he can cultivate depends on his affinity. So-hun starts to get the hang of it and realizes that one can actually choose the guide technique they want to practice. Wu places a large orb on the table and tells him it is a crystal ball used to test affinity. She mentions that the larger the area that shines, the greater the affinity. Apparently, common martial practitioners normally don't go past 30%. However, Wu has about 80%, which is considered very high, although she believes a genius like So-hun will be able to surpass 90%. So-hun takes the orb and knows it would be something extraordinary if he reaches 90% compared to the talented Wu. Just at that moment, the orb begins to shine, and to Wu's surprise, it fills up completely, showing that So-hun has 100% affinity with fire. She tells him that this means he can absorb the fire attribute spiritual energy of heaven and earth with 100% efficiency, without any loss. Wu reveals that, with her 80% affinity, that means she loses 20% when absorbing fire spiritual energy. Even so, she is already a level 5 martial practitioner, which also gave her the chance to become the president of the Star City branch. However, she lets him know that his deeds will definitely surpass her own. Wu confesses that she never expected a rural place like Star City to produce a genius like So-hun. While Wu is celebrating this, So-hun is busy thinking about getting the thunder attribute because he prefers that one. Then he tries it, and the sphere shines completely to the maximum, just like with the fire attribute. Wu sees this and stands there, speechless, like a statue, refusing to believe what is happening in front of her. Wu is basically suffering a mental block because So-hun has 100% affinity with 2 attributes. Wu hasn't even finished recovering from this when So-hun tells her that the wind attribute is also 100%. Minutes later, Wu struggles to move from where she is because she is totally overwhelmed by what she just witnessed. Basically, So-hun has affinity with all attributes, and to top it off, they are all 100%. She has always considered herself a strong martial artist, but now that she is in front of an anomaly, she realizes she is just a common person. A flashback scene shows Wu facing a giant monster that was devastating the city, and then she realizes that to defeat such an overwhelming existence, someone with equally terrifying power is needed. Wu is completely lost in her thoughts before So-hun mentions that it would be a waste for him to cultivate only the thunder attribute and leave the others aside. Then So-hun asks Wu to give him some advice about guide techniques. Wu then tells him that one has limited energy, so it's better to focus on one or two at most. Apparently, there was someone in the past who tried to cultivate all 7 guide techniques at the same time, but after decades, that person was still stuck at martial practitioner level 1. Then So-hun tells the president that he can't decide at that moment, which is why he wants to try them all first to know which one to focus on. Wu agrees with this, but she insists that he doesn't go around playing and ends up wasting his talent. Just at that moment, Wu mentions the upcoming school exam. So-hun asks her why she is talking about the school exam, and she explains that lately the friction on the battlefield of the innumerable races has been intensifying. She mentions that the war between the innumerable races and humanity could break out at any moment. Because of this, every nation is investing huge resources in forming training camps for geniuses, and she has one she wants to recommend to him. However, he has to come in first place in his school's monthly exam so she can secure him a recommendation spot. So-hun feels overwhelmed by the information and remembers that an innumerable race war was what took his parents' lives. Remembering this, So-hun assures the president that he is going to do his best because he doesn't plan to let the tragedy of the past repeat itself, so he has to become stronger to protect everyone around him. Later that night, So-hun arrives home to tell his guardians about how things have developed. They are both happy to know that their ward has finally become capable. So-hun explains to them that, as a first-level martial practitioner, he is going to receive a stipend of 10,000 yuan every month. Then he tells his uncle that he no longer has to work himself to death. His uncle is happy to hear this and concludes that So-hun is the pillar of the family, so whatever So-hun does, he is going to listen to him. That night, So-hun goes up to the roof as usual to test the fire attribute. He is able to release smoke, which counts as a beginner in the guide technique. Just at that moment, a guide techniques section appeared in the status window, and this confirms So-hun's suspicion that he has already learned it. At that instant, he realizes that the technique has levels. This surprises him because Wu never mentioned anything about it. However, he soon realizes that only he can level up the guide techniques, and this generates a certain excitement in him. However, he doesn't know how the leveling occurs. He wonders if they can also be leveled up using martial Dao points. Since he doesn't know how this works, he decides to first cultivate the rest of the guide techniques. So-hun then sits down to focus on the guide techniques, but several hours later he hasn't managed to make progress because the 7 different attributes repel each other. Then he remembers the genius Wu mentioned, who got stuck at the first level even after decades. Although the 7 attributes are present within him, he can only mobilize one attribute at a time. Every time he tries to force a second attribute, it collides violently and then disappears. Since So-hun knows that thunder and fire are similar, he decides to try cultivating them together. Hours later, So-hun couldn't achieve the result he wanted. This continues until the next day, but So-hun manages to master both thunder and fire at the same time. So-hun creates a fireball with lightning in his hand and feels proud of himself because, after trying all night, he finally succeeded. He decides it's time to test his power. The next day, he goes down to the testing field where he is going to test his power on the level 3 combat power meter. Like last time, he used 5/10 of his power. This time, he decides to use only 3/10. So-hun hits the meter with force, and surprisingly, the mark was over 2,000. So-hun finally understands how strong he has become. Then he decides to combine the power of fire and thunder to see what happens. He hits the machine again, and this time it broke. So-hun realizes that his power is quite terrifying because he has obtained extraordinary power by fusing 2 skills. So-hun is already thinking about what would happen if he were to have all 7 attributes. So-hun then returns home to try fusing 3 attributes together, but fails because it is even more difficult. He has tried all possible combinations, but makes no progress. He wonders if leveling up the guide technique would help him successfully fuse the techniques. Since the monthly exam is the next day, So-hun thinks it would be best to earn enough martial Dao points before that day. The next day, at school, Lee addresses the students and tells them that, As the front lines are getting very tense, there will be an annual training camp every year to select and intensively train geniuses. He mentions that the training camps offer abundant resources like pills and even great masters who will be their instructors. Then he reveals that it will be the top 3 students in the monthly exam who will qualify to join Star City's training camp. The students get excited upon hearing this, but So-hun, on the other hand, is more concerned about the great master of the 7th level. Just at that moment, So-hun's friend tells him that Lee-tu and Chen-san are already martial practitioners. So-hun can't believe he was away for 10 days, and in that time the two have already advanced to martial practitioners. So-hun reveals that the principal had instructor Chen come to give the two extra lessons over the past few days. So-hun's friend tells him about the impressive things Lee-tu and Chen-san have done. Thanks to this, the two can now compete to see who is the best. Meanwhile, the principal and Chen keep trying to find the student from before, but since they can't, they have started to assume he is not from their school. Just at that moment, Yang Min arrives at the school along with Lion and Lai Min. He mocks the principal, telling him that the quality of the students that year doesn't seem very good. The old man asks Yang what he wants, and he reveals that he brought his 2 disciples to train with the students so they can learn how things are done properly. The principal quickly realizes that Yang is trying to humiliate him. However, if he refuses the offer, it would be like admitting that his entire school has no level. The principal is thinking about what to do when Lion notices So-hun among the students in the distance. Lion quickly calls Yang's attention to this by whispering in his ear. Yang also turns to where So-hun is, and the moment he confirms it's him, he gets nervous because he never expected him to be from the number 1 institute. Yang immediately realizes that it would be better to retreat because none of his disciples could face So-hun. Yang mocks the principal, telling him he was only joking while commenting that his foolish disciples can't compare to the quality students he has at the school. Chen and Lee almost explode with anger upon hearing this because they believe So-hun is sarcastically mocking them, but they don't know that So-hun has seen something that is out of their reach. Shortly after, the exam begins and So-hun faces a guy named Pen. Everyone believes So-hun is lost because his first opponent is a quasi-martial practitioner. So-hun's opponent even mocks him, asking him if he is ready to give up yet. But before he even finishes his sentence, So-hun slams him against the floor as if it were nothing. The crowd is left in shock upon seeing this because So-hun basically defeated a quasi-martial practitioner with a single blow. They believe it was pure luck until So-hun continues defeating all his opponents with considerable ease. Before he realizes it, he has already reached the final, leaving the adults wondering where he came from in the first place. Lee blames himself for not noticing such an incredible talent all this time. The instructor then mentions that he must have seen So-hun somewhere before because he seems very familiar. Meanwhile, Chen-san and Lee-tu keep fighting each other to see who will reach the final. Because they are equally strong, it's hard to tell who is going to win. While they are busy fighting, they keep mocking each other about who is the strongest and who is the second strongest in the school. Just at that moment, Chen externalizes his attribute and envelops his fists in fire, surprising those watching. Everyone is impressed because fire is only below thunder in terms of destructive power. Then, Tu surprises everyone by externalizing his own attribute, which is metal, and it is even more powerful than fire in terms of destructive capability. Tu goes after Chen, launching fast attacks that leave everyone gaping. Chen feels the intensity of the attack, and the teachers realize that Tu has been hiding his true potential from the beginning, which is why he is able to defeat Chen. The instructor congratulates Tu, saying that he managed to master attribute externalization in just 10 days and also reached the minute subtlety level. The old man then concludes that there is no need for the final because, with minute subtlety, So-hun doesn't stand a chance against Tu. The instructor agrees with him, saying that So-hun might have had a chance if he had a guide technique. Just at that moment, one of the instructors bets 50,000 in favor of So-hun, and the old man quickly accepts his bet. Shortly after, So-hun and Tu meet in the final. Tu mocks So-hun, telling him he was lucky to reach the final because he didn't run into either him or Chen along the way. However, he lets him know that his lucky streak has come to an end. So-hun stays quiet because he is happy that he finally gets to fight a good human after so long fighting beasts. Tu tells So-hun that he should feel proud because he can call himself the second best in the school since he made it to the final. So-hun provokes him, asking him who is the first, and Tu lunges at him saying that obviously it's him. Tu unleashes a 5-resonance lightning fist that leaves the spectators stunned. Instead of dodging the incoming attack, So-hun decides to stand still to test his physical strength. The students yell at the referee, telling him to save So-hun because he is about to be destroyed. Then So-hun jumps towards Tu, and the two start exchanging blows. Tu is surprised to realize that So-hun can face him with skill of his own. So-hun maintains the intensity, and Tu realizes that So-hun is no child's play because each of his blows feels really heavy. The spectators are amazed because So-hun isn't using any martial technique, but he can still match Tu blow for blow. This makes it clear to the audience that So-hun's strength is no child's play. The instructor believes that So-hun has a unique physique because there is no way his power could be so exaggerated. Lee is excited that his poorly reputed school can finally present a genius. As the battle continues, Tu tells So-hun not to think he has a chance because in the end he will be the winner. Seeing how desperate Tu is to win, So-hun realizes that his physical strength isn't enough to beat him, so maybe he should also go all out against him. So-hun then tells Tu that now he is going to get serious with him, since he also showed him all his power. So-hun then externalizes his thunder attribute as he lunges at Tu. Fear invades Tu upon seeing this because he didn't expect So-hun to have an ace up his sleeve. Even the spectators are left wondering what is going on. The teacher screams like crazy upon seeing how So-hun handles the thunder technique. Moments later, Tu realizes that he is being overpowered by So-hun's technique because his thunder attribute is stronger than his metal attribute. So-hun lets Tu know that he is going to get serious with him by showing him his ace up his sleeve. He unleashes 9 resonances on Tu and in the end shatters him. At first, the students are stunned by what happened, but when they finally assimilate how So-hun won, the crowd goes wild. Upon seeing that he just used 9 resonances, Lee and the instructor also realize that So-hun was the student who disappeared from their sight that day. The principal tells the instructor that they are not just witnessing a genius, but the school's dragon star. The instructor laughs nervously, saying that the privileged geniuses of the training camp are about to receive a brutal blow. He compares So-hun to a dragon who is destined to fly high, not sink in a pond. The principal agrees with him, saying that So-hun is destined to shine internationally, not in a rural place like Star City. That night, So-hun returns home with a smile on his face, and when his guardians ask him who came in first place at school, he proudly reveals it was him. His uncle asks him if that means he is going to the training camp, and he answers yes. Just at that moment, they hear a knock at the door, and when they go to see who it is, they encounter an arrogant woman who reveals herself to be Li Yan's mom, who studies at the same school as So-hun. Since the school normally sends the top 3 to the training camp, and her son came in 4th place, she tells So-hun that she is interested in paying him to give up his spot to her son. She takes out 30,000 yuan as if it were a huge amount of money, and tells So-hun and his guardians that is what she is willing to pay. She expects them to jump at the money, but the cold expression on their faces surprises her, and she yells at them saying that the competition is brutal and that people can die. She continues by saying that those who participate in the training camp are known for consuming high-grade pills as if they were candy and using high-level techniques as if it were nothing. So-hun's mom hears this and gets scared, which forces her to ask So-hun if it really is as dangerous as the woman said. However, the uncle asks his wife to calm down. Then he asks So-hun if he can promise that he will be safe, and So-hun assures him that he will. The woman is surprised that the man believes in a child's guarantee, and the man lets her know that it is his own decision, so he has to trust him. He adds that it makes no sense to call So-hun his family if he doesn't trust him. Without further discussion, they close the door in her face, leaving her embarrassed. She walks away angrily while telling the family that So-hun is going to be eliminated. After she leaves, So-hun apologizes to his uncle, telling him he never wanted to hide the danger from him, and his uncle assures him it's okay. He mentions that he is a brute man, but that So-hun is more educated and understands the training camp better. So-hun's uncle tells him that, since he has decided to face the difficulties, he is ready to support him. So-hun's aunt hits her husband before telling So-hun that the only thing they care about is him returning safe and sound. Later that night, So-hun goes up to the rooftop to think about the journey that awaits him. He knows his guardians don't worry about him, which is why he can't even disappoint them. He concludes that he has to become stronger to protect the peaceful life he has worked so hard to obtain. So-hun then checks the status window and realizes that he currently has 285 Dao points, but this isn't enough for what he wants. Since he doesn't know what kind of monsters he is going to face at the training camp, he decides to prioritize his physical combat power. So-hun adds points to his mortal body, and after a painful experience, he realizes that he still lacks 35% to reach 100%. Suddenly, he notices that the thunder and celestial flame techniques have already reached level 2. So-hun remembers having practiced guide techniques for only a few days and nothing more. He wonders if extra conditions are needed, or if it's the normal cultivation of guide techniques that allows the attributes to level up. Since this is the case, So-hun decides that he is going to raise the bar to another level. By dawn the next day, So-hun had managed to reach level 3 in both attributes. In fact, his vital blood technique also increased by 3 points. When So-hun finally gets ready to leave, his aunt asks him to take care of himself and even tells him to run back home if things get too dangerous. However, the uncle believes that So-hun has what it takes to succeed and tells So-hun to go to the training camp to be first among everyone. After he leaves, So-hun's uncle finally shows how worried he is, even though he was trying to act strong. Moments later, Woo pulls up next to So-hun and tells him to get in the car. So-hun obeys and places his spear in the back of the beautiful red convertible. Woo speeds down the highway at an incredible speed, and So-hun asks her why she wants to see him. Woo then tells him that there are certain things about the training camp that she has to warn him about. Woo mentions that, as the association president, she has access to certain information about the participants. She reveals that among the participants there are martial practitioners who are already on the verge of the 2nd level. She mentions that there are several monsters at the training camp, and the weakest techniques they master are B-rank techniques. When So-hun hears this, instead of being scared, he gets even more excited because he can learn B-rank techniques quickly. Woo admits that So-hun is the strongest she has seen in terms of talent, but she lets him know that he doesn't have the same level of resources as those he is going to meet at the training camp. She asks him to overcome the challenges and obstacles he faces at the training camp because he has enough talent to achieve it. So-hun thanks Woo for the advice, and Woo is basically impressed that So-hun remains so calm even though he knows he is going to a dangerous place. Later, the 3 participants from Star City High School are seen traveling in a vehicle along with the principal, and they head to the Tian Lin mountain range. Tian expresses his concern about the fact that the training camp is located in the mountain range, but the principal asks him not to worry by saying that a great master is supervising the camp, so no beast will touch them. Apparently, the mountain range is connected with other cities, and there are monsters that are as strong as rank 7 great masters living there. Basically, the beasts are always fighting among themselves and are much more ferocious than the beasts found in other places. Even a rank 2 martial artist wouldn't want to set foot in the mountain range without thinking twice. As they advance along the road leading to the camp, the students can feel strange presences watching them, and they are not wrong because there are monsters everywhere. Although the competition is going to be tough, So-hun starts to like the whole idea. Upon arriving at the meeting point, they realize that several other students are already present. The students look at them like vampires, and when So-hun realizes that his companions are about to be intimidated, he takes the initiative and tells them to follow him. They walk confidently towards the temporary camp, and the person in charge tells them that they have to wait there until everyone arrives. Even after everyone has arrived, there will still be an entrance exam that will be held. So-hun is surprised to hear this, but before he can ask more about the whole matter, the big guys and girls arrive at the camp. They arrive in luxurious vehicles with a convoy surrounding them. The red-haired woman is Zio Zhan, and she is a spirit reader. The guy in white is Lin Xing from the Lin family, and he likes to show off. The third guy is the city lord's son, Han, and he has a 95% affinity with fire. So-hun realizes that the trio is the group of geniuses Woo talked about. So-hun is curious about them because he wants to see if they are really geniuses or not. With everyone present, the official decides that it is time to explain the rules of the training camp. He tells them that the training camp is located inside the mountain range and that it is 30 kilometers from where they are. Apparently, they have to have a token before they can enter the camp, and he reveals that these tokens have been embedded in certain beasts. Basically, they have 8 hours to reach the training camp that is 30 kilometers away. Although 8 hours seems more than enough for that distance, they have to consider the fact that they will face dangers along the way. So-hun, on the other hand, isn't really worried because he believes this gives him the best chance to hunt monsters as much as he wants, as long as he reaches the camp in 8 hours. One of the students asks the official what would happen if they encounter a beast they can't handle. The official tells the boy to consider himself unlucky because he would be eliminated, but he lets them know that someone would come to rescue them. The students start to protest upon hearing this because it's possible that even the strongest get eliminated while the weak pass by pure luck. The official scolds them, telling them that life is unfair while making an analogy about someone who trained very hard, but death took him at the last moment. He suggests that they walk cautiously if they don't want to encounter high-level beasts. However, he lets them know that only cowards move that way. One of the students agrees with him and tells his scared companions to go die in a dump. One of them takes it badly and immediately tells the loudmouth that he is going to pulp him. The official quickly informs them that fighting is not allowed within the camp, but once they reach the mountains, they can do whatever they want. He lets them know that they are free to steal tokens or simply beat up someone because they don't like their face. When Sohun hears this, he realizes how brutal the training camp is because they are encouraged to fight among themselves. With this, it's quite obvious that more than half of the participants would be eliminated before even reaching the camp. Suddenly, it dawns on Sohun that he could earn a bunch of points if he decides to fight the guys. The official makes everyone be quiet by telling them it's time to move. He blows the whistle and everyone disperses into the forest. The two who already had beef from before start chasing each other, and without wasting time, a fight breaks out between them. Both throw punches at each other, but it seems they are even. Meanwhile, Sohun watches them from above and isn't entirely impressed because he expected the so-called geniuses to be more ferocious and powerful. He decides to use his time hunting some beasts instead of wasting it on the participants. He is about to leave when he hears the two talking trash about poor people. This changes his mind immediately, and he decides to give them a beating to earn points, grabs a stick, and approaches the two to tell them to stop fighting. Sohun suggests they better play with him, but the guy decides to insult him instead. The two tell him they have no interest in playing with him, but in beating him up. Then Sohun tells them they are misunderstanding him, because what he meant is that he wants them to team up to beat him up together. The guy in the blue uniform runs furiously at Sohun, but Sohun gives him such a strong blow to the stomach that it sends him flying far away. The moment the other guy sees this, he realizes something is wrong because that guy is supposed to be at the same level as him, but Sohun defeated him with a single blow. He is still thinking about that when Sohun lunges at him. He gives him a very strong blow to the head with the stick and leaves him completely knocked out. After beating them up, Sohun tells them that is their punishment for looking down on common people like him. The guys in the control room are surprised when they see that Sohun appears out of nowhere and defeats the two with a single blow. They ask their boss if the two are already considered eliminated, but he tells them they haven't called for rescue, which means they are still in the game. Moments later, the two wake up, furious at having been defeated. The two start making excuses, saying they would have won if they hadn't underestimated Sohun. Since they now have a common enemy, they end up becoming friends so they can take revenge on Sohun. They grab the stick he used to hit them so they can use it against him too. Meanwhile, Sohun is already busy making his way through monsters. He runs into a bunch of wild boars that move aggressively in a herd, and as soon as they see him, they run straight at him. However, Sohun easily takes them down with a single blow. After finishing them off, he realizes that he used to get dozens of martial Dao points for defeating a single martial practitioner. But since he leveled up and became stronger, the point rewards have been diminishing more and more. Then Sohun remembers that he needs to get some tokens. He checks inside the boars he just defeated but finds no token. He is surprised to see that none of the beasts he defeated had tokens, which makes him realize that the tokens are hidden inside higher-level beasts. 30 minutes later, Sohun realizes that he can no longer find low-level beasts, unlike when he first entered the forest. Just at that moment, he runs into a rank 1 night ghost tiger. Without hesitation, Sohun drives his spear into the beast, knocking it to the ground before finishing it off with a powerful thrust to the head. Upon killing the tiger, Sohun gains 35 points and realizes that a rank 1 beast is already too easy for him at this point. However, he can only hope that the tiger has a token hidden inside. After rummaging through the beast's entrails, Sohun finally finds a token, which confirms that the tokens are hidden inside high-level beasts. Since it took him 3 hours to encounter a high-level beast, Sohun concludes that the deeper he goes into the mountain, the higher the rank of the beasts. At the same time, there are few of them. Sohun realizes that hunting low-level monsters will give him more points because there are many to hunt. Basically, Sohun switches to a quantity over quality strategy, and since there are 5 hours left in the evaluation, he decides to maximize the progress of his mortal body. Sohun takes the hunting seriously as he ravages the forest, eliminating monsters like weeds. He fights a large number of monsters before running into a bear, which is a high-level beast, but he also defeats this monster with relative ease. He punches the bear and smashes it against a tree before going after it like a maniac. All the beast sees is a terrifying man charging at him with an unforgiving blow. The blow is so powerful that it takes the bear's life and even destroys the tree that was behind it. So-hun is satisfied with his progress so far because, after raising his mortal body to 60%, he can now kill a mid-stage rank 1 beast, relying solely on his physical strength. He realizes that he has already earned 254 martial Dao points, which means he can maximize the progress of his mortal body with 100 more points. Realizing that he has 3 hours left, So-hun decides to gather as many points as possible. Suddenly, he hears a strange noise in the distance, and this catches his attention. Suddenly, a golden beast appears right above him, leaving him wondering what kind of beast it is. He has a slight idea of what beast it could be, and it is the legendary Golden Rock Beast King. He is staring the beast directly in the face when it unleashes its aura. So-hun is forced to hold onto his sword while his legs tremble, just to make sure he doesn't get blown away by the shockwave the beast causes by shaking its aura. So-hun is forced to jump behind a rock just to escape the beast's terrifying aura. This immediately makes it clear to So-hun that he is still very weak, because lately he has become arrogant about his strength. However, this has given him a dose of reality, because in the face of true power, he is nothing more than an ant. Suddenly, he notices a ball of light in the distance, and that light appears to be human. This human is a rank 7 Great Master, and his name is In Tianli. And he tells the beast that he would like to borrow its territory for the moment so he can leave. The beast responds, telling In that he never said he could use his territory in the first place. As it's getting rough, In tells the beast that he is simply going to have to beat him until he gives up. In lunges at the beast and gives it such a strong punch that the beast screams in pain, but the Great Master tells it to shut up because he isn't finished with it yet. In gives several painful blows to the beast's body to show it who's boss. After having given the beast a good beating, In tells the bird to get lost because he wouldn't like to have to repeat what he said. He tells the Beast King to disappear at that instant because now he is going to take ownership of its territory. The Beast King ends up fleeing while threatening a rematch, but In tells him to stop barking, and then uses his overwhelming aura to communicate with the aspirants, introducing himself and revealing that he is in charge of the evaluation. He assures them that they have nothing to worry about because he is going to protect them. Seeing how powerful In is, So-hun immediately raises his own standard. Moments later, In returns to the camp where the rest of the instructors wait to welcome him. They congratulate the Great Master for being so powerful that he managed to subdue the Golden Rock Beast King, known for its formidable physical strength. In tells the group to stop flattering him and to better accompany him to the control room to see those who withstood the beast's aura. Upon entering the control room, they see a replay of what happened when the beast unleashed its aura. In notices that Tonto was able to resist the aura by standing firm. They print his data, and one of the instructors reads Tonto's file. In is surprised to learn that Tonto is the city lord's son, who is always having useless sons. And he can't believe that in the end that guy finally managed to have a talented son. Singe, on the other hand, used his impressive footwork to escape the beast's aura, and according to reports, has a 96% affinity with the wind attribute. And in the case of Zio, who is a telekinesis user, she can resist the beast's aura thanks to her mental powers. After seeing the trio, In realizes that they have incredible talents, but he wants to know if there is anyone else who withstood the beast's aura. His assistant starts mentioning the names of those who actually managed to resist the aura. After a long and boring list, the assistant tells In that the people she just mentioned all have first-level strength, which is why they didn't lose consciousness before the beast's aura. And he isn't entirely impressed, since they are all from important families. He wants to know if there is anyone of common origin who managed to withstand the beast's aura. His assistant tells him that students from normal schools are barely at the initial stage of the first level. She's about to start talking in depth about Star City High School when In stops her, telling her that he has heard enough because the school really doesn't live up to its name. Suddenly, the other instructor notices So-hun on the screen eliminating monsters. Basically, he had just withstood the beast's aura, but still had energy to hunt beasts. The instructor decides to take a look, and suddenly she is paralyzed with fear as she mentions that So-hun is a true monster from Star City High School. The other guy believes his colleague is exaggerating and snatches the report to see why she is reacting like that. Just by looking at the report, the guy suffers a brain collapse, and wonders why the two, who are level 5 martial artists, are trembling upon seeing a report. In decides to check the report, but he also panics as soon as he sees what So-hun is capable of. In fact, he no longer even wants to believe that So-hun is human at this point. So-hun basically has affinity with all attributes, which makes him a completely different kind of monster. In the report's recommendation, everything So-hun is capable of is included, and it is also pointed out that he is currently cultivating all 7 attributes. In is filled with emotion because he didn't expect such a talent to emerge from a rural zone. In shouts excitedly, saying that they just hit the Millennium Lottery. Just at that moment, he mentions something that is totally strange. He points out that So-hun's vitality is only 120 points, and for his talent, that is quite rare. The instructor then reminds him that So-hun is cultivating all 7 attributes at the same time. The man gets upset, saying that's why So-hun is stagnated, because even a god would ruin himself with that. He wonders if Wu didn't explain how things work to him. Just at that moment, an assistant appears to tell them that the students have already started to arrive. In runs out to inspect them, and just as expected, the 3 super geniuses are the first to arrive at the camp because they managed to arrive 6 hours after the exam started. Shortly after, more aspirants keep arriving, and with 30 minutes remaining, supposedly all the aspirants have already arrived at the camp, except for So-hun. The other aspirants believe that whoever hasn't shown up when only 30 minutes are left on the clock doesn't deserve to be in the training camp. Deep down, In wonders why So-hun hasn't appeared yet. In starts to worry that the precious jewel he just discovered is about to be lost again. Just as the clock is about to reach 0, So-hun appears in the distance. He was so focused on accumulating points that he lost track of time, and thanks to that, he is covered in blood and beast entrails from head to toe. When the other aspirants see him, they start to mock him, believing he had a hard time and that's why he appeared so dirty. The 2 fools who wanted revenge on him also managed to pass, but decided to wait until the training camp to get revenge on him. When the clock marks 8 hours, the official gathers the aspirants to tell them that whoever hasn't arrived by that time has failed the exam. Since everyone is present, he realizes it's time to explain the rules of the training camp to them. He reveals that there are several main facilities at the training camp, which are the gravity training room, the footwork training room, beast combat, and the martial arts pavilion. He explains that at the martial arts pavilion one can exchange martial arts, footwork techniques, pills, and weapons up to rank A. When So-hun hears this, he concludes that coming to the training camp was actually the right decision. However, to use any of these services they need to spend their contribution points, which can only be earned in one way. The only way to earn these contribution points is to pass the various training courses, and if they pass with excellent results, they will receive extra rewards. Since it's already getting late, the official tells them they are free to go to sleep, but they can also go train if they so desire. He tells the injured students to follow him to the dormitories, and So-hun heads to the dormitory. So-hun enters his room and is happy to discover that it is a single room, which means he has privacy and no one observes him while he cultivates. Then, So-hun lies down on the bed as he prepares to maximize his mortal body, since he now has enough martial points to do so. So-hun inputs all the points into the bar, and this generates so much heat that it almost turns him into lava, but in the end, he achieves a successful evolution. So-hun feels so much power running through his body, but he manages to control it so it doesn't go out of control. When he finishes, So-hun can feel the intensity of the power and how good it feels. He checks the status window and realizes that he has been given a strength title, which is Supreme Lord Body. He believes this is the strongest physique in terms of strength, but since his spirit level is currently at 0%, he is sure that means the technique can still be improved. So-hun admits that the special physique is quite incredible and decides to test how much strength the Supreme Lord ability really has. So-hun grabs his spear to go out and train, but to his surprise, the spear breaks with a simple casual movement. So-hun sighs in pain because rank C alloys are quite expensive, and he paid good money to get this one. Suddenly, he realizes that he didn't actually buy it because he received it. He realizes that he needs to gather enough contribution points as soon as possible so he can exchange them for a rank A alloy spear. So-hun wonders how many kilograms he could support if he uses a weighted vest to earn contribution points. Meanwhile, in the warehouse, Tonto is moving around with a 3-ton vest and says it even feels light to him. The other aspirants are left gaping upon seeing how impressive Tonto is. Basically, they have every right to be surprised because a normal first-level martial artist can only carry a few hundred kilograms. Even Zio and Singe admit that Tonto's strength is on another level. Even In and the others who are watching from the control room are impressed by his brute strength. Then, the assistant asks In when they should look for So-hun to explain the dangers of cultivating the 7 attributes. In responds that they can't be direct because geniuses are proud, and telling him up front would only backfire. In believes that the best way is to use certain methods so that he himself realizes that his path is wrong and thus abandons it of his own will. Then In addresses the other guy and asks him if they have already gathered the other martial artists who are going to carry out the night attack. The guy responds that it's going to take a little more time because it's somewhat complicated to assign personnel to match the different combat strengths of the students. He reminds In that they just finished an evaluation, and if they face a night attack immediately, they will definitely lose their composure. However, In tells the guy to assign So-hun an advanced level 1 martial artist because he wants him to be completely crushed and defeated. Once So-hun has been beaten, he plans to explain the disadvantages of cultivating 7 techniques at the same time so that he will obediently listen. The assistants are worried that this might cause So-hun's Tao to break because his spirit is low, but In doesn't see it the same way. He argues that he is doing it to help So-hun, and that if his Tao heart breaks, it simply means he is trash. Later that night, So-hun leaves his room and sees a bunch of applicants who are following Tonto because he is going to enter the gravity room to train. Since everyone has gone to watch Tonto, So-hun has the warehouse to himself. Inside a box is a scoring bracelet that all applicants must have. He takes one and puts it on before heading to where the weighted vests are. He realizes that the heaviest vest in the room weighs 10 tons, which leaves him surprised and completely shocked. He wonders what it's made of and who on earth would use something like that. He tries to put it on but realizes it is too heavy for him. Although perhaps he could put it on, it would drastically affect him. So So-hun proceeds to put on a 5-ton weighted vest, which feels very light to him. He runs around the room to test it and realizes it is the best for him. However, he is curious about what Tonto and the others chose, and unknowingly he is far superior to them. He is convinced that they are stronger than him and decides to go watch their training session because he hopes to learn a thing or two from their experience. Meanwhile, the other applicants are admiring Tonto because he entered the gravity room with a 3-ton vest. Furthermore, he set the gravity to double, which means he is currently carrying 6 tons. Although he is struggling, it is still quite impressive to the applicants. When So-hun finds out about Tonto's vest, he realizes that he basically has a misunderstanding about the toughness of the Supreme Lord body. Just at that moment, his 2 companions appear to ask So-hun why he isn't entering the gravity room. The 2 express their concerns, saying they will only embarrass themselves if they enter because those they are competing against are incredibly strong. Since everyone is afraid, So-hun decides to enter the room. The other applicants are surprised to see So-hun enter the room and think he has a screw loose. Some even assume he isn't wearing a weighted vest, and this is thanks to the jacket he is wearing. Everyone keeps bad-mouthing him, but he simply remains silent and heads to the gravity room. Basically, gravity rooms require a lot of money to build, which is why they are only available to noble families. Since So-hun can get one for free, he doesn't think of passing up the opportunity. Since he is wearing a 5-ton vest, setting the gravity to 2 times would be difficult for him because it would be 10 tons. So-hun plans to last longer in the gravity room, so he decides to set it to 1.5. Even so, this feels so heavy that So-hun almost loses his balance. He struggles in pain while the other applicants mock him, saying he isn't even wearing a vest but still set the gravity to 1.5 times. Then the applicants remember that So-hun was the last to arrive that day, so they assume he is quite weak. Instead of running around to show off, So-hun decides to sit there and cultivate this technique under the crushing weight. 2 hours after this, he has managed to level up the other attributes, except thunder and fire. Furthermore, his vitality also increased from 126 to 130. So-hun is impressed by this and realizes that the other rooms must also have something good to offer because the gravity room gave him some points. Then, So-hun struggles to stand up, and when he finally manages it, the applicants who are still watching him mock him for being so useless. Just at that moment, So-hun takes off his jacket because he is dying of heat, and it is then that the 2 who were mocking him realize he is wearing a weighted vest. However, they still think he is a loser because the vest has no spikes, which makes them believe it doesn't weigh more than 500 kilograms at most. Some think maybe he is strong, but they are convinced he still isn't as strong as Tonto. Not long after this, Tonto comes out of the gravity room and the applicants gather around him to worship him. Tonto comes out completely exhausted after the 2 hours he spent inside the gravity room. Then Tonto drops the weighted vest and shows his muscles to the applicants who are watching. Singe then approaches Tonto, admitting that he is #1 in terms of pure strength, but challenges him to go to the agility room where he can show him who's boss. Tonto admits he is no match for Singe in terms of agility, and this is thanks to his wind attribute. So-hun hears them talking about rank movement techniques and decides to go watch Singe. So-hun then joins the others to watch Singe demonstrate his rank movement technique, Cloud Soaring Swan. In fact, they are even more impressed because Singe set the difficulty to maximum. The way he moves using the technique leaves the applicants gaping. Singe is so fluid with the technique that it even seems like petals sprout from nowhere. So-hun, for his part, immediately records the technique in his file. Without wasting time, he starts to imitate the movement, and when the applicants see this, they begin to mock him, asking him what he thinks he is doing. They ridicule So-hun, telling him there is no way he can learn the Cloud Soaring Swan technique just by watching it. So-hun ignores them and keeps practicing his movement, and as he does, his mastery level keeps increasing. In a short time, the system informs him that he has learned the technique, so he has officially entered the beginner stage. So-hun is glad that he finally learned to rank a technique. However, he has to admit that the technique is too flashy, which makes it embarrassing to execute. Since he has never seen the normal version before, he can only copy what Singe showed. So-hun then returns to reality, and since he already learned the technique, he realizes there is no need for him to enter the agility room. So-hun thinks about going to the ferocious beasts room to hunt beasts, and thus earn martial arts points to increase his vitality. Just at that moment, So-hun notices that the applicants are staring at him. He turns around and hears how the others comment on how flashy his movements are, and it is then that he realizes he probably performed the technique in the same spectacular way Singe did. So-hun immediately runs off because he realizes Singe cannot be his mentor when it comes to movement. As he leaves the place, he notices that someone might be following him and turns out to be right because the revenge twins still want to teach him a lesson. Since he is heading to the ferocious beasts room, they plan to block the door and beat him up when he comes out. At the same time, Zio and Tonto seem to be competing to see who can kill more beasts. So-hun arrives and finds the two arguing, and since he has never seen a telekinesis user fight, he decides to take a look before going to hunt his own ferocious beasts. Zio enters the room, and to So-hun's surprise, she starts floating in the air. Since it is a method only possessed by great masters, So-hun realizes she can do it because she is a psychokinetic. As if that weren't enough, So-hun is left gaping when he sees Zio defeat monsters with light rays. A beast tries to attack Zio by surprise from behind, but she easily grabs it with her powers. With the beast immobilized, she mercilessly cuts it with her light rays. So-hun finally understands that the light rays are damn daggers. With everything he has seen Zio do, So-hun finally understands why psychokinetic users are so damn strong. Zio runs into a giant python and conjures a large light sword that she launches at the snake to split it in half. This leaves So-hun even more shocked, because he doesn't remember the girl holding a weapon before. Furthermore, he knows such a large weapon would weigh a ton, which means she can do this because psychokinetics are crazy. Singe informs the other applicants that what they are witnessing is a martial art exclusive to psychokinetics, and that it is rank A. The other applicants are surprised to hear this because it is the first time they have heard something like that. The applicants ask him how he knows all that and also if Tonto has a rank ability. Singe confirms it and the applicants get excited because they already consider it a martial art exclusive to psychokinetics. So-hun realizes that the training camp is full of good martial arts. He is simply glad he came to the right place. Just at that moment, So-hun watches Tonto, but to his surprise, he isn't using any martial arts while defeating the monsters. So-hun quickly realizes that guy isn't even ready to show his secret card. Still, he is sure he will find a way to learn from Tonto later. He really wants to become a psychokinetic, but his spiritual power is low. Since it requires a spiritual power of over 100 points, he realizes he is still missing 73. With the number of points he needs for what he wants, So-hun internally decides that he is going to challenge the entire area, which is going to lead to a slaughter. Then So-hun enters the room, and his two vendetta stalkers decide to stay outside, waiting to teach him a lesson. However, their whole system goes crazy when they see the number of terrifying beasts So-hun wants to face. The two assume So-hun has really lost his mind because challenging a dozen ferocious beasts is seeking death. The two panic and even start thinking about looking for an instructor to save So-hun. However, for them, it is already too late for So-hun because they are convinced the monsters are going to tear him to pieces. Now, in the beast's room, So-hun provokes the monsters, making all of them lunge at him at the same time. So-hun jumps backward to dodge the monster's initial attack with such force that it shatters their innards. The Vendetta twins are left speechless because So-hun is shredding monsters that even mid-level martial artists would have great difficulty defeating. Just at that moment, one of them realizes that So-hun is using a familiar footwork, and then it dawns on them that he already copied Sinja's technique, which is what he is using now. The two stars are arguing because for them that isn't possible. Soon the two accept reality and realize that So-hun has incredible talent for having been able to copy the technique immediately. One of them immediately suggests they forget their revenge mission, and his companion doesn't even oppose this. Suddenly, the guy wants to reconsider his decision, but his friend points out to him what So-hun just did inside the training room. They stare into the distance and see that So-hun has defeated all the beasts in just a few minutes. So-hun, for his part, is checking the points he was given after defeating such high-level beasts. He realizes it isn't that much, which confirms his assumption that the stronger he gets, the harder it is for him to accumulate points. Before he can even rest for a minute, more monsters come out of their hiding place, and So-hun quickly gets back on his feet because he doesn't have the luxury of resting. One of the monsters thinks it's a good idea to launch a surprise attack against So-hun from behind, but So-hun reacts very quickly and sends the monster to the other world with a punch. So-hun unleashes a terrifying aura that makes the beasts think twice, but So-hun is unwilling to give them second chances because he needs their Tao values. So-hun goes after them, eliminating the beasts mercilessly. Outside, the Vendetta twins finally decide it would be good for them to become the Forgiveness twins. The two realize it could be bad for them if So-hun finds them there. The two quickly move away and soon pass by the battle room where other geniuses are using it. One of their companions is surprised that they have already returned. He asks them about their revenge mission, but the two can only answer nervously. Deep down, the two are happy to still have their heads on their shoulders. Just at that moment, Zio and Tonto came out of the beast's room and Tonto got a total of 280 points, while Zio got 270 points. Their usual followers start praising them as they count the number of monsters they have killed. As for their contributions with the weighted vest, Tonto has 100 points, while Zio only has 50. This means a lot to their followers, whose highest score is 30 points. Just then, they start talking about how powerful the geniuses are because of the number of beasts they have defeated. However, the indulgent twins are the only ones who know that there is a special monster in the training camp who surpasses the trio. An hour later, So-hun has left a mountain of corpses in the room and is already running out of steam. However, he hasn't reached his target score. Still, he checks the training clock and realizes he was awarded 700 points. Without hesitation, So-hun heads to the martial arts pavilion. Upon arriving at the pavilion, So-hun approaches the receptionist. He takes a journal from the table to read the menu. He is surprised to see how expensive rank abilities are. The attendant then asks him if he is ready to place his order. Deep down, the attendant isn't interested in serving So-hun because she believes he is going to run out of money. When So-hun finally makes a decision, he tells the lady that he wants the spirit-gathering pills. He asks the attendant if it is true that they help increase spirit. She confirms it, but clarifies to So-hun that it only takes effect once. So-hun quickly requests the 4th-level spirit-gathering pill, and the attendant is shocked when he demonstrates his points. The attendant can't believe what she sees, and being a good girl, hands the pill to So-hun. So-hun thanks the lady and asks if she has alloy spears he can buy. So-hun ends up spending all his points when he buys the spears. It turns out the one So-hun bought is the rank C dual attribute fire spear. Then So-hun realizes that his stats have improved a bit, but he still needs Tao points for what he plans to do. Then So-hun opens the box the attendant gave him to take out the pill inside. He swallows the pill and in a short time feels the changes in his body. With determination, he reveals that he is going to become a spiritual master. With the effect of the pill taking hold, So-hun can feel all the exhausted nerves in his body relax. Furthermore, his mind has become very clear, giving him the ability to perceive everything happening around him. When the pill finishes its work, So-hun is surprised to see that it actually increased his spiritual power by 24 points. He calculates the martial points he currently has and realizes that, even if he uses them all, he would still be missing 0.5% of what he needs. To get that 0.5%, all he needs are 5 martial points, which equals 1 defeated beast. With this, Sohun wishes he had killed just one more beast. However, he can't regret what has already passed, so he decides to rest so he can take care of it the next day. Meanwhile, the instructors who are going to participate in the raid have gathered in the training camp warehouse. They are handed pamphlets to review the applicants assigned to them. While others are assigned the camp's geniuses, one guy in particular realizes he got Sohun, who only has 123 vitality points. Even his friends ask him why he was assigned someone as useless as Sohun. One believes Chin made a mistake, but Chin enters the room just in time to let him know it was no mistake. The guy steps forward to question Chin's decision, saying that guy is trash. However, Chin lets him know that Sohun isn't as simple as he seems, because his combat power is at the level of advanced stage martial artists. The group is surprised to hear this because they don't expect someone with just over 100 vitality points to be able to challenge a real martial artist. Chin then tells the official assigned to Sohun that he will understand what he is saying when he fights him. The guy keeps complaining about the whole task, which forces him to give him a slap on the head. He tells him to give it his all from the beginning because he doesn't want Sohun to have any doubt that he is strong. The guy still can't believe they expect him to fight such a weak kid. He even asks Chin if he has some problem with Sohun while telling him he won't take responsibility if he leaves him crippled. Chin smiles upon hearing this and insists to the guy that he give Sohun a beating so he can receive a reward. The guy accepts this, and deep down he can't wait to take care of Sohun. Moments later, the raiders head to the dormitories to carry out the exercises. Soon Sohun hears chaos in the distance, and while he is still thinking about that, the door is cut down by the man looking for him. He almost cuts him in half with the invader's sharp sword, but Sohun disappears before the blow occurs. Sohun quickly grabs his spear, and a fight breaks out between the two as Sohun wonders how strong instructor Himfeng is. Himfeng boasts about his strength, telling Sohun to consider himself unfortunate for having run into him, and it is then that Sohun realizes the guy is from the multiple races. Sohun smiles because this is exactly what he is looking for. Sohun realizes he could gather the last 5 martial points to become a telekinetic and defeat Himfeng. Himfeng is shocked when he realizes that Sohun is actually adopting a fighting stance against him, which leaves him wondering if he really went crazy. Their weapons clash, and it is at that moment that Himfeng realizes that Sohun's strength is insane. In fact, his combat power is at the level of someone at the advanced stage, and with this Himfeng confirms that his boss wasn't lying. Suddenly, he notices there is something else, because a stage 1 martial artist shouldn't have the kind of power Sohun has at this moment. On the other hand, Sohun is giving his best, since he has never fought someone of advanced class before. He thrusts his spear with an aura around it, making Himfeng jump backward in fear. He starts to regret his actions because he has realized that Sohun is no ordinary foe. Still, Himfeng is an experienced martial artist and knows what a fight between them entails. Then Himfeng unleashes his fire attribute martial arts, enveloping his sword in purple fire. Sohun is actually impressed by this, as it is the first time he has seen something like that. Then Himfeng lunges at Sohun while provoking him, asking him how he plans to block his powerful attack called Flaming Slash. Unbeknownst to him, Sohun has his own idea and covers himself in lightning before blocking Himfeng's attack, forcing him back. The wall behind Himfeng is shattered by Sohun's block, leaving Himfeng sweating like a goat. He can't believe that Sohun blocked his fire martial art simply by externalizing lightning, and it is at that moment that he admits that Sohun is a terrifying and talented kid. However, he still keeps taunting him, telling him that it seems he is bad when it comes to the lightning attribute spear, because otherwise he wouldn't have been able to defeat him so easily. Sohun admits that he actually doesn't know, but decides to do something even crazier by mixing 2 attributes, which are lightning and fire. Himfeng almost soils himself from fright because he never thought attribute fusion was possible, but Sohun is basically doing it with ease right in front of him. Himfeng is utterly stunned because he has always believed that attribute fusion is nothing but a myth. He is still panicking when Sohun jumps at him with a powerful attack, and Himfeng tries to defend his honor by launching a counterattack. However, Sohun's power easily overwhelms him and sends him through the wall, making him crash to the ground. Since he just defeated Himfeng, Sohun is given 7 points, and Sohun smiles because Himfeng basically gifted him the points he needed to advance to telekinetic. A few seconds earlier, Chin and the martial artist are outside the dormitory waiting for a report. Chin believes So-hun should already be receiving the beating of his life, and that after this, he will be able to convince him to stop pursuing multiple guiding techniques and focus on a single one. It is at that moment that Him Feng is sent through the wall and lands right in front of the Great Master. He is completely knocked out, and his face is bruised from the excessive beating. The woman and the Great Master are completely shocked because So-hun just defeated Him Feng with ease. At the same time, the three geniuses defeat their opponents, sending them through the wall just like So-hun. The trio steps out through the broken wall, telling the Great Master that he should have sent stronger opponents because these are really weak. Then Tonto notices that there are 4 defeated instructors on the ground, and the person who beat the 4th one even finished faster than them. Sinj assumes that Him Feng is weak, which is why he lost to his opponent. However, the martial artist knows that Him Feng is actually the strongest of these 4. Chin isn't surprised that the 3 geniuses won, but he knows that So-hun is an early stage rank 1 martial artist, which means facing a level 2 opponent should be difficult, but he even finished faster than the 3 geniuses. He wonders how he could have done it, and suddenly an official comes running to tell Chin that something just happened. Chin assumes a student was killed and tells the guy that is quite common. However, the official tells Chin that it's about So-hun using attribute fusion when he was fighting Him Feng. At first, Chin thinks it's nothing serious, but as soon as he processes it, he grabs the official and asks if he is serious. The guy reveals that So-hun actually used thunder and fire to defeat Him Feng. The guy mentions it's something he saw on the screen, but he can ask Him Feng if he thinks he is lying. Him Feng manages to come to and tells Chin that So-hun really used attribute fusion. The Great Master gets agitated again as he reveals that the only genius in the world who managed to achieve attribute fusion actually took 12 years to accomplish it, but So-hun has only been practicing this for a month. The Great Master starts getting excited about all this and boasts that So-hun is a heavenly prodigy who descended to Earth in human form. The lady then asks Chin if attribute fusion is really as powerful as he says. Chin then explains that the first person who achieved it was able to subdue 2 level 2 fighters while he was still at level 1. The lady then asks why it isn't talked about enough, and Chin mentions that research shows carrying out the technique is extremely difficult and also carries the risk of ruining one's cultivation. He tells them that it's basically useless because one would be stuck at level 1 for life. However, he is impressed by how So-hun managed to do it in just a month, which demonstrates how incredible his comprehension level is. In fact, he possesses all attributes, which means he would be overwhelming if he could combine them all. He believes So-hun has what it takes to suppress the emperors of all races with a single blow. His assistants tell him to relax because he is already exaggerating everything, since fusing 2 is difficult enough. Just at that moment, Chin asks the 2 to excuse his initial emotion and says he cannot allow So-hun to cultivate all 7, because he would get stuck at a 3-attribute fusion, which would be bad. At that moment, the guy mentions that So-hun was able to overpower Him Feng with his overwhelming strength, and the Great Master scolds him for not mentioning something so important earlier. The trio is left in shock because So-hun has just over 100 vitality points, but was able to overpower Him Feng, who has 500. Then, Chin tells them that So-hun's physique might be something legendary, and decides that a practice combat will be held the next day because he wants a complete evaluation of So-hun's combat strength and vitality. He tells the 2 to bring the geniuses, Tonto, and the others to fight So-hun because he wants to see what would happen when a phenomenon like So-hun faces the best geniuses of the training camp.